we would like to hear how you, our listeners, who may be polyamorous or maybe kinky, are spending holiday time with your chosen families. So we would like to have you call in and tell us about it. We have a number set up.
It's my personal cell phone.
It is not Max's personal
Max.
cell phone. So we have a number set up so you can call and leave us a message. Before I give you the number, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You're going to call, you're going to give us your name, you're going to tell us where you are, and then you're going to tell us that you consent for us to use your phone message, and then you're going to tell us about how you're spending time with your chosen family. Either
What you're wearing.
No, not what you're wearing. Either your polyamorous polycule or pod, whatever you refer to yourself as, or your multiple partners, or if you're single, like how you're dealing with that, or if you're solo poly, like maybe you see different partners, or maybe you choose not to see partners for the holidays. Maybe you don't celebrate any holidays. Doesn't matter what holidays you celebrate. Doesn't matter when. So our number is 1-804-404-3577. One more time, that's 1-804-404-3577. It is not a 1-800 number. If you call 1-800, we don't know who you're going to get, but you can tell them about stuff too. So call that number, leave us a message. We are going to take recordings up to and including January 1st, 2020, so that we can find out all about your New Year's plans too. And you can tell us about your future plans or your past plans, just anything you'd like to share with us about your polyam holidays or your kink fam holidays.
And send nudes. Polyamory and kink. I'm someone who says his real name or says his joke very clearly.
I'm Eric.
Piss off.
Say your name again.
Eric.
Now say my name. Say my name.
When no one is around you, say, baby, I love you.
Oh no,
say
this
my
is.
fucking name.
Is this still part of the sound check thing?
No, this is bad. Oh, yeah. Is that what you were doing there at the end? The Ferris Bueller?
No, that's... But this is...
Bow, bow.
Oh, I have to do it again. Do, 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 do.
Yeah. Doodin' bow, bow.
So beautiful. Isn't that part of it?
I think they do say that at the... Yeah, they do say so beautiful.
I associate that with was it the Ferrari 454, the one that everybody had a poster of?
That is a 430. I believe. No. That's the 328.
Hannah has
the
no
one in the
idea
movie
what we're speaking about.
Oh no, I can't.
No, I'm just thinking of, I guess it's like the Testarossa, the like roadster that everybody had a poster of on their wall. Yeah.
Hannah, real quick.
Cars.
What movie are we speaking of?
I have no idea.
I said the name.
Oh, wait. Sorry. I wasn't listening.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, right. I had to watch that for school, you guys.
What?
This was
Really?
an assigned.
For what class?
Is it
Screenwriting.
it wasn't a
Froman.
homeschool thing to
No,
see
it was not a homeschool
the
thing.
Sausage King in
I had
Chicago?
to escape homeschool and move on to junior college.
That song is not from Ferris Bueller's
No, it's
Day
not
Off.
originally
it's
from
not.
that.
It was
It's originally from a Michael J. Fox movie called...
Teen Wolf.
No, is it the one,
Back to
the
the
Wall
Future?
Street one?
Yeah, it's where he like...
What is
Works his way
where
up.
he was the intern that.
Yep,
Yeah.
that works his way up. It's kind of a take on
But I
how
don't-
to succeed in business
It was
without really
actually
trying.
it was just a song.
Yeah, it wasn't
that
originally
both
from a
movies
movie.
Used.
Yeah, it was just a popular. Yeah, it was a popular song.
But what was the name of the
Shockingly, because
movie?
The it's not a.
I don't
328.
remember.
It's the Ferrari California. That's what it was.
So,
Really?
dear listeners,
I'm looking it up.
I would like you to tweet and or...
Oh, that's right, because the modern Ferrari California was like a retake
A
on
throwback
that. Right.
on it,
yeah.
Cars! Does anybody care about Cars? No.
Obviously, we've been talking about it.
I
Nerds.
care about my car.
I care about your car
it was
too.
a 250
Hannah had a
GT
flat, and
California.
we've been able to get it taken care of this weekend, which is pretty cool. What is it like? Goodyear does like a free tire patching thing. Not sponsored.
I'm not giving.
Not sponsored.
I said multinational
not-sponsor.
corporation a free spot.
Not sponsored. But like, hey, listeners, if you're out there and you get a hole in your tire,
You're giving them a free spot, dude. Don't give them a free spot.
what do you do?
No, I'm telling our
I'm
listeners, like, if you don't know this, Goodyear will patch your tire for free if you get like a screw or a nail in it. They're like, go get some free shit, yo. I'm
What are
helping
you-
our listeners. I'm not helping Goodyear. They're not making money because it's free.
This is very
You know
weird.
that the whole point is like you come in and they find something else wrong.
No,
That's the
just
whole point.
don't buy into their bullshit afterwards. Just say no, thank you.
Einmal vorher, paar Jahr früher beim Retro Classics in Stuttgart. Ich habe einmal
Are you doing a
Ferrari
free commercial for Retro Classics?
250
Ein
GT
Stuttgart.
California. Es kostet 4,5 Millionen.
So either Eric is doing a free spot for Retro Classics on Stuttgart, or his other podcast is Retro Classics on Stuttgart.
No,
Please check out
classic car
Eric's
show
German
ever.
language podcast.
Retro Classics on Stuttgart.
Retro Classics on Stuttgart.
Also Rammstein.
Rammstein.
Let's
My love for you is ticking clock.
Let's have a podcast called Retro Classics on Stuttgart and also Rammstein, so you can just talk German, and every once in a while I'll go and also Rammstein because that's the only thing I know.
It's an ASMR podcast.
Das könnte ich sowieso machen.
It's available to our Patreon patrons.
Eric said it's a good idea.
Nein, das habe ich nicht gesagt.
He just said he didn't
that
say
was
it's a
a
good idea.
Rammstein lyric.
Oh, sweet.
And part of
Something
that
in
stupid
German.
song, Du hast.
Du hast.
Hast.
Yeah.
I saw a guy
Ich
in
habe es
a
nicht gesagt. Das hab ich
tuner
gesagt.
Volkswagen on Midlothian Turnpike the other day with Du hast on his license plate.
I really
Yeah,
want
That's
Well,
commitment to Rammstein.
Nein, das
because
ist
the cool boys in high school
blöde
all
Schweine.
listened to Rammstein, but I
The-
couldn't stand it.
The,
The
cool,
cool
boys,
boys,
and Christian
The
homeschool.
edgy homeschool Christian boys.
They were not cool.
The cool.
I
Okay,
can
so
assure you of that.
are you ready for this?
Tell me.
So I have a tie to our next episode, which is going to be a conversation about Dolly Parton.
They don't even know what this episode is yet.
I know they don't, but this is amazing, right? So the cool boys that I hung out with
We're
all
also
went
not
to
cool.
the Church of God, which is the same church that Dolly Parton went to when she was a kid because she was Pentecostal. So the dog needs to come
Yeah, I
in.
forgot he was outside.
But I'm going to keep talking while you let the dog in. I think it's fine. Our listeners understand. But so our next episode is about Dolly Parton. But the cool boys that I hung out with listened to Counting Crows. So I listened to Counting Crows. And then I was in a band called Foot of Pride.
Oh.
And we covered some Counting Crows songs. And we were so cool. Not.
It's pretty awesome.
It wasn't.
Are you impressed?
Called-
Hannah?
I'm very impressed.
I just live to impress Hannah.
You didn't have a band that was like just trying to be Counting Crows, something called like Enumerating Ravens or something like that.
No, it was called Foot of Pride.
There should be a band called Enumerating Ravens. though.
There should be a band called Enumerating Ravens.
I'm going to look that up right now.
Is there Hannah is our research person?
So the band was called that because of the like air show disaster in Rammstein, right? That was
Yeah,
probably
it's
the
an
reason.
Air Force base.
Counting Crows?
No.
Yes. Counting Crows was called Counting Crows because they counted up the number of crows after the Air Force base air show disaster where a bunch of people were killed.
This
in
is
Rammstein.
true facts, everybody. You heard it here first.
I'm reading the title thing.
Do it.
Ready, go.
Welcome to the Pod Cultcast, where we talk about life, love, learning, and libido, and share our journey through polyamory and kink. I'm Max.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Chasten.
And I'm Eric.
Good job.
Yay, we remembered our names.
Fun times.
Did you get information, Hannah?
No, I did not find anything for enumerating ravens,
Okay.
except for the Raven Paradox, which I hadn't heard of before.
I forgot
Dog
what we wrote.
smells
Yeah, the dogs.
sweaty.
So I've been promising the dog a spa day, and I have not yet given the dog a spa day, and I feel bad about it, but also, I don't feel bad about it because I know it's going to be gross. Come here, baby. Get under the blanket. Come get under the blanket with me. Yes. Blanket
What do you guys want to
times.
talk about this week?
So we watched the CBS special about polyamory. Well, actually, so I saw a thing on Instagram and it said that consensual non-monogamy is the overall umbrella term and that polyamory is part of consensual non-monogamy.
Yes. Correct.
That is true.
That's the thing that is
Asked
true.
and answered. We've actually covered specifically that in earlier episodes, correct?
We have, but
Now
I'm just
everyone's up to date.
just as a just making sure everybody's on the same page with us. So we watched a special about consensual non-monogamy produced by CBS, and it's available on YouTube, and we'll make sure that we link it in our show notes. And we're going to talk about that special and what we saw and how we feel about it and feelings it brought up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of stuff. So does anybody want to kind of start us off? And we all took notes except for Eric.
I took very sparse notes.
Because
took
Eric has a
mental
photographic memory. Yeah.
Eric does have kind of
I
a...
do not have a photo.
I
He
didn't
has
either.
an odd... What is
I
that?
forget shit all the time.
What's the
never
thing when
mind.
you hear things and you remember them?
Smoke weed every day.
My brain?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, you're kind of taking that in a visual conversion over to audio form of eidetic memory, I guess. But that's not for hearing.
Fucking nerds.
You're so fucking handsome.
You fucking nerds.
We're not nerds.
All right, so the special, the CBS News special. So they talked to one couple, they talked to a throuple, they talked to, what else did they talk to?
They talked to a
quadrifoil.
closed...
Oh, yeah.
a closed quad.
Yeah,
They're not called a
polyfidelitis.
quadrifoil.
Yeah, a polyfidelitis quad.
Right? Couple singlish folks.
And they talked to somebody who was in a
solo
relationship where they had to divorce
poly. Oh, that was interesting.
their wife because of visa issues
With their other partner.
with their other partner and then marry the other partner, and they lost their benefits and stuff. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the one lost the benefits, but the other gained a lot of benefits.
They gained a lot of benefits because they got to stay in the United States.
Do you know, one thing that I kind of liked was that, so that person that you're talking about, the one that split from one partner and married the other, was obviously in a small, not so great apartment in New York City.
In
Right.
Brooklyn, yeah.
The throuple seemed to be in like a really modest home.
I believe that
somewhere.
was in North Carolina.
Is that what it was? Somewhere, yeah. So it was nice that it wasn't all like very attractive young people in like seemingly wealthy backgrounds. You know, it seemed like kind of normal people.
Well, there was
Yeah.
also the couple that also had one had a boyfriend and one had a girlfriend.
They were also Brooklyn, and they were much more well off.
They were a little more
and attractive.
affluent, but they were very attractive.
They were poster children for.
They
the message.
were kind of they were and they were a little swingery, a little.
Well, they
more
said that
swingery.
they started with sort of a swinger.
Yeah, but
sort
now
of
they had
situation.
more relationshipy kind of situations.
Right.
And that they weren't committed to it as a lifestyle. They could see things changing down the road and
Right.
were open to,
Which is
however was best.
Perfectly reasonable, especially for younger people.
Mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
my first note is defensive normalization.
My
Because-
first note
Oh, yeah.
was that he treated that cat like shit.
Oh,
There's a
swinging the
cat shaking
around.
moment.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Bridget and Alex?
I am talking about Bridget and Alex.
Okay.
Oh, so yeah, I didn't write down any names.
I wrote down most of their names.
Okay.
so.
But anyway, so within the first, like the very first thing that happens when they talk to the very first unit is they do the thing that we hear people do a lot, which is defensive normalization, where you go like, she said specifically like, oh, people think this magical thing happens.
Yeah, I
But
don't-
we're just like everybody else. We spend most of our time just hanging out. And what do you do about dinner? I don't know. Whoever feels like dinner makes dinner.
Okay, so for context, you're talking about the throuple from North
throuple?
Carolina.
Yep.
North Carolina.
Yeah,
And they started off as a couple who were open, and then they met a third person, and they now are a closed triad.
Right.
Right, and we'll put those terms in our show notes. And like I said, we're also going to link to this show. And they described a lot of normal stuff. They said that people ask them a lot, like, how does dinner work? And how does,
And so, and I think it is, of course, perfectly fine for all of us, for any of us, to talk about how we are just people living our lives the same way anybody else is living their lives. But I think that polyam people have a tendency to get like defensive about it and make it kind of a big deal when
Yeah.
it doesn't
Like
have
a
to be.
gluten intolerance.
Yeah, like anything we feel like we owe an explanation of to others when we really don't.
No.
And also somebody else is allowed to like describe their monogamous love story in terms that are only glowing without qualifications, because we all understand the shared experience of that.
Right.
I'm not sure what she meant by everyone thought that there's some magical thing happening.
Well,
That was
I
a very
think
weird
they were
thing to
talking
say to
about
me.
the fact that with polyamory in any form, there is this misconception that it's just this sexy orgy all the time and everybody's fucking. And one of the things about this couple is they really describe that like, hey, when I'm in conflict, they use the term annoyed, but when I'm in conflict with one partner, I'm probably not going to have sex with them, and I will have sex or sleep with the other partner. And when I'm in conflict with that other partner, I'm probably going to sleep with or have sex with this partner. I think that they did themselves a disservice because they were describing sex, but I think that if you talk about things in terms of affection and not just in terms of sex, it's more positive.
Right. Well,
But
that's my second note is, and I paused it to get the timestamp. At 2 minutes and 8 seconds, we are 2 minutes and 8 seconds into this special.
yeah.
And they're already saying, like, it's not all a sexy orgy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, polyam people. Like, can we
Well,
stop
actually, I
saying
think that had more to
same
do
thing?
with the editing of it.
Like, true. Yeah.
And I think the production of this, because this was actually something that I was going to talk about. Actually, I can get to that later if you want to continue with yours.
No, that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
These are
Go
two
for it, Eric.
things.
Because the way it was actually presented, I found kind of funny. And this is where we're getting into the meta territory. I believe that was produced by a poly person who was trying to make those strong arguments.
Oh, okay.
There was even with the solo poly chick who you remarked had giant titties. There was a
We'll leave it a
moment.
mystery who remarked that.
I mean, any of us could have said that. We all talk about giant titties.
We love titties, everybody. We're not ashamed.
But she was describing something, and I don't actually remember the specific phrase that she was talking about, but there was very slight background music, and when she made her point, which was a very poly point, and I kind of want to go back and find it.
Maybe
You're
if you
talking
had
about
taken notes,
Kaylin.
Eric.
Her name was Kaylin.
Her name was Kaylin, yes.
She said she felt oppressed in monogamous relationships, and she talked about how she tried to be monogamous. And when she was talking, I really thought about you, because she was talking about how there was this fairy tale world of monogamy.
Yeah. Actually, that's what it was. She was talking about that and how there was kind of like she would meet a person and every person was the one, and she made a hand gesture when she said it, and the background music changed, had a sound that went with the hand movement, and then it stopped. And then when she was talking about in a more serious, realistic way, her thoughts on polyamory, there was no music, so that you were focusing on that. That is the kind of production stuff that, I mean, the whole thing was littered with it.
Yeah.
That they were
interesting
very subtly trying to make the argument for polyamory through music, lighting,
Yes.
shots of going down the street in the suburbs.
Yes,
like that.
everything was presented in a very domestic light. Everything was very sort of sunny, and there were lots of white backgrounds. Everything was presented in this very, like, there was a lot of purity signaling, like, white backgrounds, lots of fireplaces, lots of cooking together. There's a little cat. They talk about children. They talk about family a lot. They talk, it was all presented in a very forcefully normalizing light. And there were a lot of music cues and a lot of like directing you to pay attention to
this point.
I feel like it was edited and produced in a way to really make consensual non-monogamy seem normal, seem positive, and it was produced in a manipulative way. Not in a manipulative way that I have a problem with, because
I agree with the message, but
I agree with the message.
Right.
However,
it was a little heavy-handed at times.
It was heavy-handed at times. I agree with you entirely.
But sometimes that's just what you need to get people to
And they
listen
only
to.
had 20 minutes.
Yeah, true. It was.
So,
It's also very short, very quick.
Yeah, it was very short.
This is a podcast where we talk about love and relationships, sex and kink, and polyam issues and whatever else comes up. While we talk about those things, we will probably also touch on stuff like abuse and violence and mental health challenges. Those can be difficult topics, so keep that in mind moving ahead.
I'm drinking the elderberry tea, so it's
Your
helping.
mother smells of elderberries. No? Nobody on that one? Okay.
Is it African or European swallow?
There you go.
So I thought...
go
okay,
on.
go ahead.
While we're talking about that woman whose name was
Kaylin?
She also says something about, that, again, the normalization thing. We're not here to wreck the world and burn it down, which is something that we talked about when we talked about the Poly People Are Ugly article, right? That some of that conception comes from the fact that there are a lot of politics involved in changing societal norms and thereby wrecking the world and burning it all down.
So I would like to talk about the thing that I had a really strong emotional reaction to.
Please.
So there was the couple, Bridget and Alex, and they, faced the camera. Their names were given.
This is the younger couple in Brooklyn?
The younger, very traditionally attractive couple.
Yeah, right.
They're in Brooklyn. They have kind of a nice place in Brooklyn, and they have a swinging past, and they now have a boyfriend and girlfriend. They, at the time of recording, were not out to family, and they were going to, before airing, were going to talk to their family about their lifestyles and to make sure that they protected their family so that when the show aired, it wasn't a surprise. And the producer asked, is there something that you would like to say to your family now so that when they see this, after you've already talked to them, etc.? And Alex says that he hopes that his family still loves him and understands that just because this is who he is, that this is part of who he is, and that his family still accepts him and doesn't reject him for who he is. This is essentially him coming out as having an open relationship, a relationship where he sees other people and has sex with other people. And I wrote down that and he said that it was scary. But I wrote down that it's scary to be authentic. And I think that this is something that people who are LGBTQ go through. This is something that trans people go through, that it's scary to be yourself. And I had a really strong emotional reaction to this because it is scary to be authentic. It is scary to talk about being poly. And later I know we're going to touch on the fact that there are not a lot of protections for polyamorous relationship. I had such an emotional reaction because I guess it's just something that surrounds us all the time. We function within the queer community. We function within the poly community. We know people who are trans. We have friendships with people who are all of these things, and we see these pains, and we all hope that the people in our lives and our families will accept us for who we are, and we don't always get that. So I don't know what we were talking about before this because I have such a strong emotional reaction to this, so I get kind of lost in the whole.
I would say that his reaction to it, though valid, was a little more emotional than necessary.
I mean,
because I think that it's most likely that his struggles, though valid, are to a lesser extent than all of those other people you were just talking about.
I think that pain and fear to an individual are valid because the pain that you experience is personal and is no bigger or smaller than the pain that one other person experiences. And a feeling of being rejected by your family is no bigger or smaller than another person feeling like they're going to be rejected by their family, especially when we're talking about traditional societal values. A family can reject you for anything. really. When I tried to talk to family members about being autistic, I did not get a warm, like, thank you for talking to me about your diagnosis. I got all kinds of excuses about why I wasn't autistic. So, like, family can reject you and not accept you for lots of reasons. And it hurts all the time. It doesn't just, you know?
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, Chastity, I appreciate that you said coming out as having an open relationship instead of coming out as being polyamorous, because I will always hold the line that being non-monogamous, being polyamorous, being a swinger is not an orientation.
Yeah.
It's a thing that you do. It's a relationship style that you have. So I appreciate that you inserted the extra word there.
Right.
Yeah. I know we've talked about this before, and I feel like it's a difficult line to walk, because I would tend to still refer to myself as polyamorous, even if I wasn't currently in multiple relationships or even looking for multiple relationships. And that seems kind of inconsistent with what you're saying. I guess I just personally have a little bit of conflict, like internal conflict about that, because I do think it's different. It's not an identity the way that we sometimes use that, but it's definitely something that, people hang their happiness on and like have strong connections with. And I think, some of the folks that were interviewed here were definitely expressing that they, that their lives would not be complete without this. And I think that was part of the emotional appeal that was being highlighted here was, the need that folks have to express themselves in this way. So, I don't know. It's a little bit fraught for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, it's a piece of an identity. It's not the identity. That's, I think, the way that I can best think about it is that there are many colors on that palette, and the one doesn't necessarily define the rest of them. Or
right.
It's not hierarchical in that sense at all.
Well, they refer to the idea of a relationship menu that you can choose from.
Actually, I thought that was a nice way to put it. What was her name again?
I don't remember her name.
We didn't find that, but we
she
found
was
her
the
book.
one with the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the book was called The Polyamorous Next Door. And we'll put a link to that in our show notes.
But we haven't read, so we
haven't read it. We can't recommend it, but we will put a link to it. It won't necessarily be in our resources, but it will be in the.
Oh shit! I just found the whole thing as a PDF.
That doesn't matter. We will
pause the recording. Eric's going to read it.
No, he's not. Eric doesn't read. I just was looking for a name.
Well, just a second on the identity thing. I of course I'm in a different position because Chastity and I are married. Chastity and I are going to be married. Hannah, you and I are in a relationship. We are going to be in a relationship. So, yeah, I guess it's a little different for me. In a conversation with someone, I will not say I am polyamorous or I am non-monogamous. I will say I'm in an open marriage and I also have these two other partners.
Right.
And I will say I'm an open marriage and I have another partner.
Right.
But I might say I am polyamorous the same way I would say I am feminist, not because that's an inherent part of who I am, but because it's an essential belief that I hold.
Right.
So I think, it just, language isn't as clear as it.
I don't say I'm queer and polyamorous and hold those in the same level.
It's a belief that you hold that you are able to have multiple relationships or the possibility of having multiple relationships is important to you. What is the belief that you hold?
I don't know. I'm trying to sort that out because I feel like we have all embraced that as part of who we are and as an important part of our everyday lives. That's the entire reason we're here having this conversation. So it's not just something that we do sometimes dependent on the circumstances.
Okay.
No, but it's one of many, many things that makes up the sum total of a life. Or whatever.
Well, okay, so Kaylin, going back to the documentary, Kaylin, she said specifically that she felt oppressed in monogamous relationships. I share that feeling.
Actually, she's not even the only one.
She's not the only one who expressed that.
Said that too.
Right.
Used those very words.
And Bridget said, like that she, every couple of years, like it felt like that they needed to do something. And it felt like, I can't remember her exact words, but she said, like when they did it,
restless.
Yeah, that they felt restless. When I've been in monogamous relationships, I have hit this point where I needed something more. And it wasn't that my partner was failing me. It was just that I was interested in other people. And there was this part of me that went like, why can't I just explore things with other people? What is this line that society has drawn? Mm-hmm. And so when I had a partner, Max, primarily, that said like, yeah, let's do this. Like, this is a thing that feels normal for us. That felt really good and natural to me, as opposed to not. And in times when Max and I weren't separated, when we had a brief pause, and I was seeing other people, I was dating multiple people at the same time, but not necessarily in what I would describe as polyamorous relationships. I was more doing like
a casual relationship.
Non-committed
relationship.
Right, non-committed relationships with multiple people. But I still felt and identified as sort of having an open thing kind of with people. I just couldn't like commit to a monogamous relationship. I couldn't be monogamous anymore. Once I experienced polyamory and open relationships, I couldn't go back.
Yep. I was looking up people's names.
From the documentary.
Oh yeah, did we ever come up with the author's name?
The author's name is Elizabeth Sheff.
Elizabeth Sheff. Okay, thank you.
And yeah, her menu thing was interesting.
Oh, because she's a chef. Get it?
So
yeah,
she said consensual non-monogamy.
Wow.
And then she talked about the menu. The menu, her menu included relationship styles like polyamory, open relationships, serial monogamy, blah, blah, blah. And that serial monogamy for most people is at the top of the menu. It's the most common dish ordered.
Yeah. And I'm a serial monogamous because I like Cheerios.
Yeah. A stat that I wrote down was that 4 to 5% of the United States people participate in non-monogamous relationships.
They also countered that stat in the very next thing that they posted up on the screen, saying that 1 in 5 had experienced it, and 1 in 5 is a little higher than 4%.
The contrast
Read
being
the
that
stat.
there are many more people who have experienced non-monogamy than people who are currently in a non-monogamous relationship. 4
to 5% of people in the United States participating in a non-monogamous relationship at the time of that documentary. That's the stat I wrote down. There was another person that they had. His name was Mahdi, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he was married to one partner and then had another partner who was not a U.S. citizen and had a visa. So he divorced the partner who was a U.S. citizen to marry...
No, they married the 2 other partners. Right?
Oh, the 2 other partners. Mm-hmm. Okay. He divorced his partner who was a U.S. citizen and his 2 other partners married so that his partner who was not a U.S. citizen could stay in the United States. So that meant that Mahdi no longer has benefits like healthcare. There are a lot of legal protections that people in polyamorous relationships with more than one people, non-monogamous relationships, I really need to make sure I'm using the right terminology, consensual and non-monogamous relationships, there are a lot of legal protections that you don't have. Now, we, the 3 of us, because Hannah lives with us, have talked about contractual protections. Like, what if Hannah has to go to the hospital? Like,
right, this is a concern, like that I would not be able to visit Hannah even, or to make decisions, or anything that needs to be done. Like, all of that stuff would revert to her parents.
Right.
They would still be legally her next of kin.
Right, and they would be able to shut Max out.
Right. So, yeah, that is a concern for us, and something that we have discussed vaguely, but haven't actually taken the time and made the effort to talk to someone to find out what our options are.
Right.
And here's one of the issues that I see with saying relationship styles are just a morally neutral free choice. I don't disagree with that, but I think that we hold different types of relationships in different cultural value. And so if you're going to say a certain type of relationship and a commitment made in a particular way has higher legal and social standing than all of the others, then like you're inherently in conflict. And I don't understand how we're expected to continue to push for rights. And as this person said, what is marriage equality to me? That doesn't apply to my situation at all. I don't have marriage equality. None of us do. So on what basis, if we are just all out here freely making unimportant choices that don't hit at the heart of who we are as people, do we advocate for our rights?
No, I agree with you. I agree.
How do we say you shouldn't be able to fire me because you disagree with my, lifestyle choices? How do we continue to push forward in all of that if we're making that distinction between things that are just stuff we do and can choose not to do at any time?
Locally we have a quote unquote vanilla polyamory group that is sort of an offshoot of a polyamory and kink group, because we can't have polyamory and kink tied together, because then it's like it becomes icky, because if you have anything sexual tied to a relationship style, then it becomes politically messy to try and fight for rights.
I'm gonna push against you there, because I think it's also just important to have that, because there are many people who do not identify as kinky who also identify as
absolutely.
As
but the motivation behind creating that group, I believe, was so that there could be a group that could push for some political stuff and some rights and
sort of lobbying
without other people being like, "Oh, y'all kinky weirdos."
Exactly.
Try to present a quote normal face.
Exactly, a normal face. So I don't know a lot about the legalese and a lot about the fight for equality on the LGBTQ end. I'm just going to go ahead and admit that, simply because as a queer person, I haven't faced a lot of the struggles because I'm in a heteronormative appearing looking situation.
Present as
I present as straight, so I don't face a lot of those things. So in a corporate environment, I didn't get a lot of pushback. And when, even though we were in relationships with a third person or with couples, that wasn't something that was necessarily talked about in my corporate environment. So I didn't face any harassment over that or flack.
Well, as far as the personal rights goes, that's a whole different matter. The rights surrounding employment and access to public spaces and public things, that's a whole different matter. The easy fix for the marriage thing would have been the easy fix before marriage equality was passed nationwide, and that would be to legally recognize that marriage is a religious right and that domestic partnership is a different thing.
Yes.
And if you go get married in a church or wherever you get married, you should then go to the government and sign a contract with your partner and say, we are our legal partners. And the easy fix would be to allow anybody to do that with whomever they wish to do that.
Yes.
And draw up a contract.
And with multiple people.
Yeah. And to file it, and that would be the end of it. But since a marriage equality has passed and everybody who had concerns about it was absolutely right that it led to people marrying horses and chairs and things, all of those things came to pass. We know that people would just write contracts to be legal partners with their car.
You leave me and my dog out of this. You don't talk to me and my dog.
Yeah, none of those things happened. You guys took it really seriously.
Sorry. No, actually, what I was going to bring up is this has absolutely nothing to do with any non-monogamous relationships or anything. But what I did see in Germany quite often is that people will have two weddings. They have their church wedding and they have their state wedding. And
what? Because church and state are separate? What?
But you mean an actual ceremony?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They have their government ceremony where they're legally married. And if you choose to, you have your wedding in the church and whatnot.
Yeah, I know when Chastity and I got married, it was right after, we had to get a marriage license, and then right after the ceremony, the priest signed the marriage license, and we had to return that to the county, and that was what made us legally, domestically connected, right? Isn't that how that worked?
We went to the county
That was getting the marriage license.
before
That
to
was
get the
getting
marriage license.
Yeah.
I think the priest turned it in for us.
Oh, did they? Well, in any event,
Yeah.
like the whole point is the priest.
That's what I
Has to,
mean, is
yeah.
that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
They're not intertwined.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting distinction.
Yeah.
Like to them, it's just normal. But I always found it kind of odd at the time, but applicable now.
Yeah.
I mean, it could just as easily be something that's how it is here. And with such a construct, you can broaden that to be maybe not a chair or whatever, but however you wanted it to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's I don't know. So can we talk about something for a second? Because there was a the triad, the closed triad that was on there. One of them was a teacher, and she's
At least one. We don't know what the other one did. She
That's
might have been
true.
a teacher too, but the other one
but
said
one was a teacher, and she really, I mean, she was outing herself. So I don't know what she's doing now, because at this point, her school board and her boss at school told her it was fine. But
Right.
now all the parents of
exactly, and the parents are always the problem.
The
My mother
parents are
worked in
always the
schools, and
problem.
We know that.
But
Yeah.
so we know teachers, and we know,
And their names are
yeah.
Aaron R. Aronson.
No.
I think this is another thing where, like, the way that the editing was tying all the stories together, the point here was very much like, we're not asking for any special recognition or protection. We just want to be left alone. And I think that this fed into that and was like, oh, if only that parent hadn't had a grudge against me and reported me, I would never have had to, like, deal with this anxiety and frustration. True.
True, but the thing is that it's gonna happen, and it happens all the time. And we know a lot of people who really do hide things. I mean, there's a burlesque performer who just did burlesque and lost their job
In the public schools.
in the public school system locally, and has, I think now they're getting ready to do some work in Chicago, and that's great. But locally, they lost their job just for doing burlesque. And that there's like, what's wrong with that? Like, so, so imagine being polyamorous or by God, pinky and the brain, or kinky. So
Kinky in the brain. Got it.
but we know a lot of people who have a lot of corporate jobs, and a lot of, like, just normal people who have normal jobs and lives who happen to have this other part of their life, and people are judgmental bastards and
Well, I mean,
want to ruin other people's lives
Yeah.
over some shit.
even in my industry in construction, which is, sort of notoriously lenient,
Yeah.
a lot of people wash up in construction because of the sort of leniency of the industry
Right.
about having prior convictions or having drug problems or having any number
Yeah,
of
they'll
things.
take you anyway.
Like, I'm still very picky about who I talk to about my relationships, because I just can't afford to close off opportunities to myself
Right.
with someone who might be conservative or religious or something and have an exception to
Right.
to the way that I live.
Right.
You know?
Well, I mean, sometimes you're quiet about your politics because of that.
Oh, I'm always quiet about my. Well, not really because of that, just because I don't want to fight. But
Or sports ball, like the whole thing is.
don't do the sports ball thing.
If you're enjoying the Pod Cultcast, check out our podcast show notes at www.podpodcultcast.com, or keep up with us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook at PodCultcast, and Instagram at Cult with a V. Love us? Give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, or help us continue to make this podcast possible by becoming a patron. Head over to patreon.com/PodPodCultcast. Remember, that's Cult with a V. Our patrons get access to exclusive content, cool swag, and our exclusive Patreon series, the Cultcast Media Club podcast.
Narf.
Pinky and the brain.
I really wish with the triad that they had paused a bit more to explore the set of relationships that they described, because I thought it was really cool. They were saying, you know, each of us individually has a couple dynamic,
Right.
and we also have a relationship together as a
Right.
group. And I think that's just one of the coolest parts about all of these different and more complex relationship structures is, you know, the extra relationships almost that emerge out of that. And I was interested to hear like what they felt like their
I think it's also
Yeah.
something that they probably did talk about more, but
Yeah.
It got edited out.
Yeah,
edited
that was
out
around the
because-
2-minute mark where we diverged into sex. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah. No, I think
Sex
that it was
sells.
supposed to basically mention that is an aspect of it, but not go
Mhm.
into deep because it would have been almost too much of their own argument
Well,
for what they wanted to present. in 20
okay,
minutes.
so let's explore that a little bit with us, because although of the four of us, not all of us are involved in romantic relationships, but I think that our listeners enjoy us as people. So could we talk about our total group dynamic and then maybe talk briefly about our individual dynamics, kind of the four of us? Because, you know, like we hang out together in different combinations.
Well, let me tell an anecdote. Let me say what happened last night.
Okay.
I went to a Friendsgiving dinner with my other partner and her husband and his other partner and their friends. I came home to you and Eric, who are partners, and Hannah, who is my other partner, like hanging out and having drinks and like experimenting with booze and stuff. Like that's kind of the complex web of interpersonal
Lies.
relationships we have. And on Tuesday, my other partner and you, Chasten, are going to yoga together.
Hot yoga.
Hot, sexy yoga.
No, it's not going to be sexy. It's going to be sweaty as fuck.
Hot, sweaty yoga. So that's the kind of weird relationships that develop when, you're dating other people and your partners kind of like each other.
I think it feels weird because it's inside out, because, I think we've all shared things that we experienced, groups that we were a part of, whether it was theater or music or competition or, myriad of things where you already had really close friendships, and then those friend groups date amongst each other.
Yeah.
And
It's
and
not
that's like
actually
built
any
in.
different at all.
No, it's
Right.
not.
So this sometimes, being in polyamorous relationships can be like inverted in that it's like we all became friends because of these romantic relationships instead of usually,
The other way around.
we've seen it
Yeah,
work
yeah,
the
yeah,
other way
totally.
around. But how we get close to each other is different, but you're right, is mostly exactly the same as people experience all the time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So last Tuesday, Hannah and I did yoga together. And then Max, you were out last week sometime. Wednesday. And I was having a sad day. And I texted Hannah and I said, look, this might be weird or inappropriate, but I really just need to lean against somebody on the couch because I feel sad, but I need human contact. And she said, I have a plan. What kind of takeout food do you want? And we are going to watch this Christmas cookie decorating competition. And that's what happened. We got pizza and we leaned against each other and sat on the heated blanket on the couch and we ate carbs and cheese and we watched cookie decorating. And
It's a great night.
Yeah. And
everybody brings their pieces and their roles to this, and this is one of the roles that Hannah brings. Hannah is very good at just going all right, here's a plan, here's what we're going to do as it pertains to care or taking care of somebody else. There have certainly been times that I was in rough shape that Hannah just kind of goes all right, here's the pizza order, and here's the TV on, and here's me either touching you or not touching you, whatever you want. And, everybody brings their piece to the thing.
And then last night, Eric came over and I was like, he said, what can I bring? I was like, nothing. I've got it all under control. And Eric was like, what can I do to help? And he very meticulously chopped garlic for me and chopped up tomatoes and helped make the dinner. And we had these glorious flatbreads and they were so tasty.
I minced the garlic.
Oh, I'm sorry, minced the garlic.
Chop it.
But it was very precise Brian mincing. It was very
That's how you cut garlic.
it was very precise Brian. And and then we had a tequila off and we did shots.
I think you did. I just had a couple of shots.
Yeah, you had
You're
a
in
couple,
competition with
but
yourself.
you were a good sport about it, and you let me be competitive in a weird way and put up with my nonsense so that I could have a fun night while you just sort of
Got drunk.
And then
and now I'm going to talk about me.
Okay.
Yay!
Hannah had a car problem yesterday. And so I came up with the plan. We're going to get Hannah's car taken care of, and she might need to take your car on Monday.
Yeah.
And, I will make sure that hers gets taken care of and picked up. And
Came and met me with a plan. Like I was in the kitchen and I didn't even have time to be upset because you had already solved the problem for me. Thank you.
so the person, Madi, is that what we decided the name was?
Yeah.
Who used they, them pronouns, so I'm trying to be careful about that too, said that, the way that people start to understand these relationships is when they start to understand that there's more support,
Right.
not divided attention.
Right.
Right.
You used the phrase
Yeah,
multiplying
multiplied.
attention,
Yeah.
Multiplying attention.
which is how it
Right.
feels.
Yeah, I've had a light on in my car. And so Eric has the little light reader thing that I keep forgetting to go like, hey,
I keep
bring this
forgetting to
thing.
bring too.
It's not on now.
We both
Yeah.
No, it's been on.
It's not on now. It wasn't on yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's why I keep forgetting. So, you and I will do it. Let's high five to remember.
Oh, I already forgotten.
Oh, let's high five to forget.
What's happening?
My tummy's growling.
Oh.
Yeah. So
So that's how people start to understand these relationships.
Yeah.
When you go, like, man, I don't want to do this. It's not about sex.
Well, there
And
was.
It's not about, this person loses attention, this person loses out on something. It's that we all have more support. We all have more friendships.
and we gain beef. We gain happy beef.
75 pounds of meat is now in the freezer because
75
of
pounds of
my
beef.
partner, Lauren.
Oh, I was
You're
trying
vegan?
to interpret that somehow metaphorically, but
You're
you meant the
vegan?
literal beef.
Your vegan partner
My
beef.
vegan partner
and your veg.
sold me 75 pounds of beef.
Yeah, well, that's why
She
there was
texted-
so much
that my
left over.
vegetarian partner was very happy about.
It's
for some
always
reason.
good to have some meat on hand.
So now Hannah and I have 75 pounds of fucking beef.
we have a plan
in the
for this.
freezer.
We have a plan for the shank.
We did
Eric's
pick it
gonna
I don't
come
even
over.
know what a shank is.
Eric's gonna come
we have
over.
cube steak. I don't even know what that is.
Eric's gonna come over. We're gonna put the shank in the crock pot.
Do you
with some
braise it? Do you
carrots.
braise a shank?
You do
That seems
braise
like-
the shank.
You
that
braise
seems-
the
I'll
shank.
braise your shank.
I'll shank your brace.
No, let's shank each other. Yay, sharp thing.
Oh.
Shivs.
If that's the way we're going out, I'm with it.
Sharpen
So they also
toothbrushes and
brought
such.
in somebody's mom to
Oh,
comment
man,
on
I
how
Or
wasn't
it
gonna-
shank?
Yeah, but they didn't
wasn't
say.
gonna give anything
Oh,
to
you know
her
what?
yet.
I assumed that was somebody in the thing's mom, but it might not even
No, it
have
wasn't.
been that,
It was-
right?
No.
They
Like,
showed a
just-
picture.
And
of
she
her.
was a bitch.
Oh.
Well,
I think she
she's
was trying her
trying.
best.
Judgy. She was trying, but man, she had a lot.
She
of
was
shit
like,
that
I'm
way.
fine if you fuck people, but don't have them raise my grandchildren.
That's true.
Yeah,
That
the
was
phrase
unpleasant.
was something along the lines of like, there are not going to be three people in that relationship to
Unless
raise a
it's
child
me.
unless I'm the third one as
person.
grandma. Like,
Yeah,
that's
it's-
not how grandmas work, dude.
Yeah. Well,
That's how grandmas think they work. But
I thought it was really interesting to hear her say, that her worry was if you have the freedom to be in and out of a relationship, what if someone just takes that as a permanent out and leaves my child heartbroken? Obviously, that's the fear, but that's the fear
it doesn't
anytime
matter
they're in
what
a
kind of
relationship.
relationship. Yeah,
And I
that's
just
always
wrote down in
Yeah.
all caps, everyone has a permanent out. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
I know that we just came out of talking about legal protections and how marriage gives us security. But even within that framework, you get to say no. Like, you get to leave if leaving is the right thing for you.
Right.
And if that breaks somebody's heart, that sucks, but that's
also
life.
life.
Marriage is not prison unless you're Max. Hi, Max.
Oh,
Wow.
And even within that, just charging ahead. Even within that, people get their hearts broken all the time
Yeah,
within
that's
relationships
part of
and
having
don't
a
end that relationship. You know?
Yeah, you can
Like
have your heart broken, and then the next day things feel better.
Yeah, like the process of staying in a relationship, the hard work of staying in a relationship is getting your heart broken over shit and then like figuring it out and picking up and coming back together. You know?
Yeah.
Well, in a zooming out sense, because it wasn't just that judgy woman that would touch on things like this, but most of she was posing arguments against polyamory, and any time that all came up throughout the whole thing, because other groups and other dynamics were bringing up, oh, well, people will say blah, blah, blah. But any of the arguments made against polyamory were every single one of them, no different than a monogamous relationship.
Right.
Those are the same exact things that one deals with when interacting with other people.
Right.
It has nothing to do with how you define the dynamic.
Do something if it brings you joy. If it brings you toxicity and unhappiness and it's not healthy for you, don't do it. Right?
Yeah.
right.
What were you going to say, Hannah? I'm sorry.
No, I was just wondering out loud, like, do you perceive polyamory as multiplying risk in the same way that it multiplies, like, the benefits that you get out of a partnership?
It's both.
I think that if you go into every relationship with the anxiety that the relationship could end, you need
Then
to
you're-
examine that.
Yeah, you're kind of...
Everything ends. If you go into a
Right.
relationship understanding that it could end, then you can control that. You can go into a relationship and say, you know what? I want my relationships to end where I walk away a better person and that person walks away and I leave them better than I found them.
Right. It certainly does open us up to the risk of more hurt. But if you are getting into a monogamous lifetime marriage just so you won't get hurt again, that's a pretty shitty reason to get into a marriage.
Yes.
My greatest letdown from this thing was that the rainbow-haired professor from
Peter
Duke,
Segal.
Peter Segal, doesn't seem to have a social media presence. I looked.
Yeah.
I looked
So
too.
he
I
was
found him.
from Duke,
Oh, you
and
did
he
find him?
well, not a social media presence,
and he was a professor of
but I
the
did find a great picture
of
him.
history and sexuality, and I wrote, oh, so he's super into kink. So I wrote,
Yeah.
I wrote wacky hair. He just freshened up his hair for this
Is
documentary.
that like a latex situation he has going
No,
on?
that
That's
is
patent leather.
a stretch. That's like a stretch faux leather. So,
But he's got 80s racing stripes on his pants.
I just want to mention that this documentary did say that in January of 2018, a task force was created to raise awareness for consensual non-monogamy by the American Psychological Association. And I reached out to, and if I do get any information back, I reached out to our previous guest from our last episode, Dr. Lindsay Weisner, to see if she knew anything about it. And if she doesn't, then I'm trying to give her a resource. And if she does, then I'm just curious to see what she has to say. And I will try to share that if she's okay with it. But I couldn't get any further information because it's all locked behind the wall of the APA. So we'll see what that says. I'm curious, but it is raising awareness in a positive way as opposed to investigating it to see if it's healthy. So they're raising awareness to see the effects that it has on families and our children in a very positive light. So I'm very happy about that.
They also mentioned the Chosen Family Law Center, which is something that we need to look into and do some research about, because I am not aware of that.
Oh, I'll write that down.
Yeah. So are we getting close to wrapping up our notes? Does anybody else have anything?
I have nothing more.
I never had any to start.
Right. Hannah, do you have anything else in your notes that you wanted to talk about?
There's a response piece from the Federalist about why monogamy is the right biological choice, but maybe we'll save that for another time.
Yeah, I think
Is
we
there
could
a
probably
quote?
do
Is
that.
there
That
like
almost
a-
sounds
Do
like
an
it
hour
could be
on
a
that,
whole
right?
nother
Is there
episode.
a quote from that you could give us?
So, I can at least give you this very long headline.
Okay.
No, human beings aren't happier when we ditch monogamy for polyamory. Monogamy may be a struggle for many couples, but human beings and cultures thrive more in the absence of polyamory.
Okay, well, fuck that.
I don't want to be absent.
Okay, so fuck them. Fuck the Federalists.
Oh, yeah, you could have said that before.
Yeah.
Fuck all that. So I think that's a great note to end on.
Great.
Fuck all that. See you
Fuck
next
all
time.
that. Ooh,
Why so
wee.
serious?
Fuck all that. Fuck all that.
All right.
So
What do we need to go out on?
I think that's it. I think we can just say bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
You've just heard the Pod Cultcast with your hosts Max, Chasten, Hannah, and Eric. Our theme song is Spencer Blues by Lobo Loco. Our break music is by Gabarino on YouTube. We have a listener survey going on right now, and we would love your feedback. If you could take 10 minutes to visit www.podcultcast.com/survey2019, we would love to hear from you. Give us your feedback on our episode length, how often we release, and the content that we provide. We want to make the best podcast for ourselves and for you. Thank you so much for listening.